Hey everyone, The Long Walk is based on Stephen King's early novel from the 1970s, which has finally come out on the screen. What fascinates me about this film is how such an intimate story translates from the page to the screen and how horror can transform it. That's what I want to dig into with this review, as well as the big question of, is it ticket worthy? The Long Walk takes place in a post-war American society where resources are real scarce. The walk is staged as a patriotic ritual really meant to unite the country across political and former enemy lines while offering riches and a single wish that will be given to the person who outlasts all of the others. Each state, they hold this lottery, sound familiar, for one young man to compete. Walkers must maintain 3 miles per hour. They get a warning if they fall below, and 3 warnings, it gets you ticket punched, which basically means you get a bullet in the brain. That last man standing thing, it means you win this big prize, and that's when you get it. It's a competitive and brutal game that is publicly televised, capturing what feels like a very realistic piece of alternate American history that never existed. What makes it compelling is that the boys don't have a choice because not volunteering is seen as cowardly, while volunteering is framed as patriotism. So they all volunteer to march in the hopes of winning the prize, but what they get are roadside friendships that stretch out endlessly ahead of them until they stop. Now, before I get into my impressions, we really need to address the elephant in the room. For many people, especially younger audiences, The Long Walk, it's going to look a lot like Hunger Games. But here's the thing. Stephen King's novel came out first, decades earlier, in fact, and it itself was influenced by other works as well as history. That's how literature evolves. Stories speak across generations, reshaping themselves in ways that resonate with new audiences. So when you watch this film, remember that The Long Walk isn't a ripoff. It's one of the origin points of so many other new stories. Now, The Long Walk is a deeply American alternate history. It feels like a post 1950s Civil War film, something that might have been directed by Alex Garland, but isn't. Instead, it's directed by Francis Lawrence, the director of, you guessed it, The Hunger Games. And it's honestly so much better in his hands because he does a great job with these twisted alternate history epics. This film is horror without monsters, without devils, without magic, without explosions. And the terror, it lives in the minds of the boys. They only have two choices: walk or die. And it's more than 400 miles. I mean, it's literally as long as they can last. And it lasts for days without stopping, without sleeping, not even bathroom breaks, like nothing. They just have to keep walking at 3 miles per hour. And every minute is monitored by the military escort. The horror here unfolds in the shadows of human endurance. And the price, it's survival. What I loved about how this story comes together is how it balances despair and the fragility of hope and fear. Out of desperation, new friendships actually emerge, and the boys come to realize that these are the final moments of their lives. I mean, it's one thing to say it, it is another thing to know your last moments of life and what that feels like. That changes everything because every step matters in a new and different way. And every new bond, it matters in a way that friendships before didn't. Whoever survives will carry the others with them through his life. And that gives the march a crushing weight. Looking at the long walk, weapons, sinners, and even like the upcoming Frankenstein film makes it feel like we are in the middle of a cinematic horror renaissance. Horror doesn't need CGI. It just needs a good story. The failures in the other genres have given horror a chance to thrive in stories that embrace those small moments and conflicts. Films like The Long Walk, they lean into that intimacy. They deliver those stripped down stories that are both personal and infinite. And that's what you get with this film. One of the most powerful elements of The Long Walk is the way that it's filmed. The story takes place almost entirely on the road, yet the camera work keeps it from ever feeling static. There are moments of tight, up close frames that pull you directly into the exhaustion and the pain of these boys. And then there's these long shots that stretch out across the landscape, showing the distance between the walkers and the citizens who've come to watch, or the towns that are just out of reach. That dissonance between intimacy and the distance that it keeps from those around them keeps the pressure constant. While you're staring into the eyes of a boy on the verge of collapse, or watching the small figures moving endlessly forward on the road, you can't help but to feel some of their desperation, even though there's like this distance between you and the characters on screen. And that is really rare in a film. This movie also builds a rhythm through its visuals, the steady pace of the footsteps, one after the other, and the way they fall into step with each other as they walk. Then there's the mechanical voice of the megaphone announcing warnings, and then the final punctuation of a gunshot, all of which become the cinematic language of this film. It feels like a drumbeat of life and death that the camera translates into movement and sound. And it's here that the film really finds its horror. Not in the monsters, not in the gore, it doesn't need that stuff, but in the relentless pace, the framing of each faltering moment, and the silence that lingers just after the next person falls. Performances in The Long Walk are strong across the board, honestly. But there are three that actually really do stand out. The first is Mark Hamill as the major. He really is perfect in this role. He's severe, he is malicious, and, he's convinced he's doing all of this for the good of the nation. He really conveys a belief in this role. He congratulates the boys for their suffering, twisting their pain into proof of patriotism. It's infuriating, and it makes him one of the most compelling villains Hamill has ever played. He's so loathsome that you can't help but want him to die, which is a strange thing to say about the man who gave us Luke Skywalker and the Joker. It's a bold casting choice, and he actually nails it. Raymond Garraty, number 47, played by Cooper Hoffman, anchors the film. And each of these boys is actually given a number, and the number is the thing that's called out, not the name of the person. So you really do get to know number 23, number 47, number 25. You get to know them by their number. And it's really interesting that it boils these boys down to a number. Garrity is a really good man in this film, and he carries a really heavy bitterness with him, but not the kind born out of cruelty. Instead, he has a desire that runs so deep that it becomes painful to watch. He doesn't just want to win, he needs to win, and the film slowly reveals why until he realizes the true cost of what winning would mean. With each mile and with each conversation between him, Pete, and the others, the cost of that desire becomes really, really clear. Hoffman captures that tension perfectly with a mix of stubbornness and quiet desperation that makes Garraty both sympathetic and tragic at the same time. His arc reminds us that survival, it is not about outlasting others. It's about what you're willing to live with in the end to win. Peter McVries, number 23, is played by David Jonsson. He is Garrity's closest ally on the walk, and Pete has a hard life behind him, constantly having to choose goodness and love over his darker instincts and experiences. And you know what? That's kind of beautiful in this film. And the film does a great job of pulling that out and then twisting it. His open optimism is the mirror image to Garrity's concealed bitterness, and their bond gives the march its emotional heart. Together, Hoffman and Jonsson sell that friendship, and they carry the story together. The larger ensemble of walkers, that is all 50 boys, never fully fades into the background because the camera angle seems to always keep them in sight, except in the final scene when all we see is the winner's back as he walks into the night. The boys are a mix of young men who range from scared to hopeful and even arrogant, but each of them feels like a whole person rather than a body about to be eliminated on the road. Their deaths are all meaningful, whether delivered by a bullet due to exhaustion or by choice to just stop walking. And each new death adds weight to the journey. As their numbers dwindle, the bond among the remaining walkers, it grows stronger. And by the time there are only two of them left, the question becomes unavoidable. Who's going to fall and who's going to continue on? So while The Long Walk is filled with these powerful performances, the story, it's not flawless. The missteps don't break the film, but they're there and they're worth mentioning alongside everything else that does work really well. The most obvious thing is that the adaptation isn't completely faithful to Stephen King's novel, but it is still a pretty strong adaptation. There's going to be some disagreement about some of those changes from different people, but I do think that the choices that were made with care and made sense for the story. So I didn't really have a problem with them, but I did notice them. And then there's the violence paired with the bleakness of the story and the constant wash of sepia tones that just pull the color out of the palette and gives you this really grim perspective. And its brutality is really quite relentless. While that's part of what makes the film so effective as horror, it may feel a bit overwhelming for people who aren't prepared for that kind of experience. There was also one detail that just kind of pulled me out of the story every time I noticed it, and it's this. And I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but there's this one point where one of the walkers wears out his shoes and then continues walking for dozens of miles without any visible signs of damage. No torn socks, no bloody feet, no attempt to take boots off of one of the dead men. In a film that gets so much right about the physical and emotional costs of the walk, that choice is the one thing that really undermines the realism of the story. As for the horror, this genre gives us a lens to reflect on how we live our own lives as well as the world around us. It allows us as audience members to connect with the characters on a human level to understand the delicate balance between hope and fear. The Long Walk is that lens, and while it clearly captures the alternate American past, it does so in a way that explores our modern world today. It gives us this safe lens to view our world and our experiences through these walking boys. It's easy to slip into the rhythm of the march with the megaphone warning, the sudden silence, and the final gut shot. That rhythm becomes life and death. That repetition builds tension, creating a constant awareness and a wariness that every step could be somebody's last. The citizens on the roadside, cheering or staring in mute horror or watching on TV, mirror us in the theater. That mirror makes the story unsettling because the line between participant and specter and accomplice really blurs, and we become part of the story in that way. The film doesn't let you look away from that connection. Instead, it asks you to think about your role as a viewer and what it means to watch suffering as entertainment. Why do we enjoy it? Why do we do it? What do we get out of it? And why do we do it in real life too? Watching The Long Walk is a voyeuristic look at our alter egos in another timeline, connected to our own obsession with televised pain and reality TV, game shows, winner takes all spectacles that expose a fractured society, pushing it into the us and the them camps, instead of everyone standing up and saying, hey, this, it's wrong. That's what speaks to us in 2025. We live in an era saturated by spectacle that devastates people, both in front and behind the cameras, from big studio productions to a woman in her home office sharing her thoughts about a movie. The Long Walk shows us how we are all complicit in watching other people's pain and joy, and it silently asks us why we do it. We all face horrors, moments of failure and shame and irreparable loss. The Long Walk humanizes us by humanizing those boys on the road. And the shared theater experience, hey, everyone in the theater around you is experiencing it along with you, carrying the weight of the march with them as they leave, as you leave, and as we talk about it together. These are the things that we carry. And this film, it's about the impacts of war, pure and simple. Even for people like us who have never had to live through a war within our country, and we still seem to be living with the echo of a war that has never actually been fought. And that's one of the things that isn't explicit in this film, but it's a thought that will run through your head as you're watching it because of how it's filmed and how realistic it feels. Is the long walk ticket worthy in 2025? I'm going to say absolutely. The cinematography, the camera work, the character development, so much of it, the story, everything, they are emotionally powerful on the big screen, even without CGI or explosions or things like that. A close up of these boys in their final moments has more impact in the theater than it will have on streaming. I think it really would lose a lot of that impact on the small screen. And for me, I gotta say, with the one little error that just jumped out at me every time I saw it, if it wasn't for that, this would be a 10 out of 10 for me. But I'm gonna have to say, because of that, this movie really is like a 9 out of 10. But honestly, that's still a great score for a film coming out today. If you like psychological dramas or films like Stand By Me or Gallipoli or stories that include kind of close male friendships, I think you're going to get something good out of this film. And yeah, it's dark and it's violent, and there are 49 boys who get shot in this movie. That's a hard thing. So while this might seem like a good movie for boys or teens, you really got to be mindful about what happens to all of these young men. However, The Long Walk also offers hope and community. And above all, it offers friendship and it teaches us about the preciousness of time. That's a beautiful message for a horror film to carry. All right, so that's enough from me. What about you? Are you going to go see The Long Walk? Have you seen it? Have you read Stephen King's story? And if you did, what did you think about the adaptation? And hey, while we're at it, let me know what you're thinking down in the comments. What's your favorite Stephen King book, if you have one? And if you like this review, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe because it really does help. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening. Happy viewing. I will see you all again soon. Bye for now.